Welcome to our study of the Apocalypse, and I'm your host, Natalie King, here to help you keep the moon beneath your feet in this dark world. We're in chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. Then I saw in the right hand of him who sat upon the throne a scroll with writing on both sides and sealed with 7 seals. That he sees this person on the throne, only the right hand is significant. This reminds us of Exodus, where Moses asked to see the glory of God, and God tells him, no man can see my face and live. This is Exodus 33. And the Lord said in verse 21, there is a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in the cleft of the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand, and you will see my backside, but my face you must not see. So this is still building on that Exodus motif, looking back at Moses, looking back at the Exodus, where no man can see the face of God and live. Now remember in chapter 4, we already began to build upon some of that Exodus motif there. When we see the... It says in chapter 4 and verse 5, from the throne came flashes of lightning, rumbling, and peals of thunder. Now in chapter 20 at Mount Sinai, it says, when the people saw the thunder and the lightning and heard the trumpet and saw the mountain of smoke, and they trembled with fear. So all of that, and that phrase in the Apocalypse about the flashing of lightning and the rumbling and thunder is going to continue throughout the Apocalypse, appearing at the end of every set of the 7 judgments. So it's building upon that Exodus motif. We also saw in chapter 4, just to refresh your memory, in verse 6, it says, before the throne there was what looked like a sea of glass. And that sea of glass is echoing the Red Sea that was parted. And if you remember, it speaks of that it's a sea of glass. It speaks of the stilling of cosmic evil, the conquering and the defeat of evil in the world. But it's building upon this Exodus motif. So the right hand is also significant in that the right hand speaks of authority. So it is suggesting divine authority. And it is suggesting that what all is going to follow in this, after this, that it's still in God's right hand. God is still in control. Though the world is unraveling, or what we call decreation, it's still, as if God is still in control. And if he's in control, then he has not lost control. So he sees the right hand, and in his hand was a scroll with writing on both sides. That there's both sides reminds us of Ezekiel chapter 2. I think it's verse 10. Where Ezekiel mentions a 2-sided scroll. It also reminds us, the scroll that it's sealed, reminds us of Daniel chapter 8 and verse 26, where Daniel talks about a 2-sided scroll that's sealed. And Isaiah 29 and 10 mentions a scroll. I don't think I have that ready, but I don't think it's, let's see. Isaiah 29... I think that's the right one. I don't think I have it marked, but that's okay. Oh yeah, here it is. In verse 10, the Lord has brought over you a deep sleep. He has sealed your eyes, the prophets. He has covered your head. For you with whole vision is nothing but words sealed in a scroll. And if you give the scroll to someone who can read it, he will say, read this, for I cannot. It is sealed. Or if you give the scroll to someone who cannot read, he will say, please read this. I do not know how to read. So he's really taunting them with this idea of a sealed scroll, with not having perception, not being able to perceive and discern right from wrong. So what good is the scroll going to do? Because if they read it, they can't discern. So he's mocking them in Isaiah pretty much about their lack of spiritual discernment. And that could be an illusion here, because what this text is going to call for is for spiritual discernment. He calls for wisdom twice in the text. So that could be an allusion here. We're referencing of the sealing of this scroll with 7 seals. And that it's 7 means that it is utterly and completely sealed. And in verse 2, and I saw a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice. That it's in a loud voice means that because it is going out to all of the universe, all of creation. Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll? So he's looking for someone of worth. But no one in heaven, on earth, or under the earth could open the scroll or even look inside. So it's a 3-partake division. Neither in heaven, nor earth, nor under the earth. This is suggestive of sovereignty. That is looking in heaven and he can't find anyone worthy is telling. Heaven is a holy place, a righteous place. And yet he's looking in all of heaven and he can't find anyone in heaven where things have been made perfect, but there's no one who's worthy. So it's telling that we don't get to heaven on our worth. We get to heaven on the fact of the blood of the Lamb, which is about to be introduced, the Lamb of God. So no one in heaven, on earth, or under the earth is found worthy. Verse 4, I wept and I wept because no one was found who was worthy to open the scroll or look inside. So he weeps because without the opening of the scroll, the consummation of the kingdom cannot come forth. Therefore, there's not going to be a victory for the saints. There's no judgment against those who persecuted the people of God. No judgment against those who persecuted Jesus Christ. There's no consummation of the kingdom, no eternal inheritance. And so this is why he weeps. That he weeps means that there's nothing for the church to be afraid of in what is going to be unleashed with the opening of these scrolls. He's weeping because it can't be opened. So that signals that there is nothing that's going to bring harm to the people of God. That is, yes, we're going to be facing troubled times. Yes, there's going to be martyrdom we're going to see in the text. But there's nothing that causes defeat, utter defeat against the church. And so he's weeping. He wants the scroll to be opened. He wants the consummation of the kingdom. Verse 5, then one of the elders said to me, do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals. So this is echoing back that he calls him the Lion of the tribe of Judah to Genesis 49 in verses 9 and 10, where it's Jacob is blessing his sons, and to Judah, the tribe of Judah, he says, you are a lion's cub, O Judah. You return from the prey, my son, a lion who crouches and lies down like a lioness. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet. And he's prophesying the Messiah coming from the tribe of Judah. He also echoes the root of David, which is Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 1, where he says, a shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his root a branch will bear fruit, which is speaking again of the Messiah. Do not weep, for a Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has triumphed. That he has triumphed, the word triumph there is conquered. Now remember, to the 7 churches, each church was told, to him who overcomes, or to him who conquers. It's the same word here. So, to him who conquers. Now we hear that this Lion of the tribe of Judah has conquered. That tells us that there's some sort of association between the overcoming or conquering of the 7 churches with that of the conquering of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. It tells them how they're going to conquer is through the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Now, conquering is a war term. It's militant. And we're going to see this militant language all throughout the Apocalypse. It's not speaking of taking up physical arms, but it's speaking about a spiritual battle that is at play behind the scenes that we are often undiscerning of. So conquering. For he is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals. So we find that one has the value and the worth. He is worthy. Verse 6, then I saw a lamb, looking as though it had been slain, standing in the center of the throne. Okay, so he's turning, expecting to see a lion, but instead sees a lamb. And this lamb, it actually says, looking as though it had been slaughtered, is what it says in the Greek. So it's slaughtered. That he has been slaughtered. The tense in the Greek indicates a past completed action with ongoing results, with abiding results. So it's a completed action with abiding results. He has been slain, but the effects of that slain is ongoing. That he is standing speaks of his victory over death. So this lamb, he looks like he's been slaughtered, which reminds us of what John the Baptist said, behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Now the slaughtered lamb is again echoing and building on the Exodus event. It's an allusion to the Passover lamb, the Paschal lamb that was slain. And if you recall, that at the last plague, which was the death of the firstborn son, God tells Israel to take a lamb, a blameless lamb, a spotless lamb, and to slaughter that lamb, and to put the blood on the door frames of their house, and that the death angel will pass over you. But for all of the Egyptians and those who failed to apply the blood to their home, then the death angel would visit them. So this is building again on that illusion of the Exodus event. Speaking of the slaughtered lamb, those who do not have the blood applied can be affected by the death angel. Okay, the judgments of God. And we're going to see the people of God being sealed so that they are like the people in the land of Goshen. You know, Goshen, and God placed Israel in Goshen where they were protected from the plagues. Goshen means he draws near. So, in other words, when you see these things happening, these plagues, know that he draws near. But this is building upon that Exodus event with the Paschal lamb. So beautiful. And he's standing. Speaks of his victory, his complete victory over death, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That he's in the center of the throne speaks of his close proximity to God. That he is on the throne with God. It's joint rulership. They are co-equal in divinity, co-equal in rule and reign, co-equal in sovereignty. So there is no demigod theology here. He is not subordinate. Jesus is not subordinate to the Father. He rules and reigns with the Father. So he is on the throne. He is standing in the center of the throne. Which is speaking too that how God, when he set up the tabernacle in the wilderness, God instructed the people to put the tabernacle in the center of the community and the community around him. And we saw earlier in chapter 5, how the throne was in the center and the community of angelic beings and the 24 elders and the 4 living creatures were around the throne. So he's in the center of the community, in the center of the throne. Throne speaks of ruling. He's secure in his rulership. Now this is going to come into play in chapter 13 when we're introduced to the beast, the 2 beasts, the beast out of the sea and the beast out of the land. He's given a throne. Jesus isn't given a throne. He has a throne. But the beast is given his throne. And the beast never sits upon his throne. And the throne room, there is no throne room scene for the beast. It dwarfs that of this throne room scene of the Lamb. Speaking of the superiority of Jesus Christ, so the superiority of the Lamb. He's being worshipped. Whereas in the other, and he's being freely worshipped, mind you. In chapter 13, the beast is worshipped, but only because of tyranny, only because of an oligarchical rule. If you don't worship the beast, then you don't receive the mark of the beast, then you cannot buy or sell. There's something that is being leveled against the people to force them to worship the beast. But here there's no force. This is all voluntary. The idea is that they are in awe of God. And it is telling that the angelic beings and the 24 elders and the 4 living creatures, we get this idea that let's take for the angels, for example. They've been in the countenance of the Almighty for eternity, and they've never grown familiar. They've never grown tired of His presence. They've never grown accustomed to the awe of God. But they remain in awe of God and of Christ, the Lamb. They're encircled by the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders. Again, they're around the throne. The Lamb had 7 horns and 7 eyes. The 7 horns speaks of His all-powerfulness. He is omnipotent. He is complete in power. 7 eyes echoes Zechariah 3:9 and 4:10, where it speaks about the eyes that go throughout all of the earth. The 7 eyes. And so the 7 eyes speaks of His omniscience quality. He is all-knowing. Nothing escapes His eye. He's discerning. So when He judged the church, critiqued the 7 churches, it was with right discernment. And He says, so He had 7 horns and 7 eyes, complete power, complete in omniscience, all-knowing, which are the 7 spirits of God. The 7 spirits are the way of speaking of the Holy Spirit in complete imperfection of God sent throughout all of the earth. That they're sent throughout all of the earth speaks of God's missional practices. He is a caring God who is concerned throughout what goes on throughout all the earth, and nothing escapes His eye throughout all of the earth. But He is the God who is active among His creation. He participates with His creation. He has not left His creation to run on its own. No, He's involved. He came and took the scroll. Oh, let me back up and say this. That He's the slaughtered lamb means He is involved sacrificially. He has paid the price, is willing to pay the price, and has paid the price for redeeming creation. He came and took the scroll from the right hand of Him who sat upon the throne. That He is not given the scroll, but He takes the scroll, speaks of authority. He has a right to that authority, a right to take the scroll. He came and took the scroll from the right hand of Him who sat upon the throne. And when He had taken it, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Now keep in mind the 24 elders remember, they're a symbol of the church. 12 patriarchs and 12 apostles. The Old Testament saints and the New Testament saints in redemption's history. And they fall down before the Lamb. Every time we see the 24 elders, they are going to fall down prostrate before the Lamb. What a beautiful picture of worship. Each one had a harp. Harp was used frequently in worship. And they were holding golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. Okay, that these bowls, the bowls of incense echoes the altar of incense, which, if you remember, you had the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was housed. You had a thick curtain that separated the Holy of Holies from the holy place, and right outside that curtain sat the altar of incense, which was where the incense was offered up. It is a symbol of prayer. That is the closest thing to God. It was the closest piece of furniture in the tabernacle to the Ark of the Covenant. So prayer is the closest thing to God. It's the heartbeat of the church. That these are golden bowls speaks of the value and the worth of the prayers of the saints. God values our prayers. It's incense going up, meaning that God receives the prayers with welcoming arms. They're pleasurable. Our prayers are pleasurable to Him. They're a sweet aroma to Him, Scripture says. And they sung a new song. That they sing a new song speaks of a new work of grace, a new work of God. And they're celebrating that new work This new work that God is doing with the consummation of the kingdom calls for new celebration. You were worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, they sing, because you were slain, and with your blood you purchased men from God. So he's worthy to open the seals because of his sacrificial death. And he says, he speaks about it, purchasing men from God. Purchase is a financial term. In the Greek, it's a term used in the financial sector. He is purchasing, he's buying back. Redemption is what we would liken that to. Men for God. From every tribe and language, people and tongue. Now that is going to become a very familiar term throughout the text. Only, I think it appears 7 times, only never in the same order and never with the same words. It's going to be interchanged throughout here, but it's a code word. It is a literary device that we want to follow. So he has redeemed an international community. So the gospel has reached to every tribe upon the earth, every people, every language, every nation. It is the fulfillment of the Abrahamic promise. When God told Abraham, I will make you into many nations, and you will be like the sand and the seashore. And that was speaking of God's redemption quality that was going to come forth through Abraham's loins in the person of Jesus Christ. It says in Malachi 1 and 11, my name will be great among the nations, from the rising to the setting of the sun in every place. Incense and pure offering will be brought to my name, because my name will be great among the nations. So this text in Revelation is a fulfillment. It's seeing the fulfillment of the Malachi promise of all nations worshiping. So taking that Abrahamic promise to a level, speaking of the church's multi-international worship of the Lamb. You have made them to be a kingdom and priest to serve our God. Here again, he's building on that Exodus motif. Because in Exodus, at Mount Sinai, chapter 19 and 6 of Exodus, he says, although the whole earth is mine, you will be made to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Speaking of the function and the vocation of the redeemed. Now, keep in mind, what he's saying here is that we're going to be a kingdom. It also says in another place in Revelation, kings, speaks of the reigning of the people of God in high places, as Ephesians says. I also want to add this. God has called his people let me back up. In Genesis, he told Adam and Eve to work and tend to the garden. The exact same words there, work and toil or tend to, is used for the priest in the tabernacle. I think it's in Exodus. I don't have the text, but it's the same words used in those two things. So he was calling them to serve the heavenly kingdom. That we're kings, we're a kingdom reigning, is suggesting too that the people of God are called to be stewards of this world. We weren't just to be stewards of the garden. The garden was a symbol. We're to be stewards of the spiritual things of God, but also of the civic things of God in this world. What I'm saying is this. The people of God are called to steward this world. We are called to serve in high places. We are called to dwell in the seats of Congress, to serve in the seats of the Senate, to serve in the occupation of the political arena. The people of God are called to be presidents and prime ministers. The people of God are called to serve on the local governing boards, to be governors, to be mayors, to serve over on the Board of Educations. We are called to steward this world. And if we do not occupy those seats, Satan's minions will occupy those seats. And when Satan's minions occupy those seats, then we're going to get into chapter 13 with the beast. an oligarchical government, a tyrannical government. So the people of God are called to serve in this world, to steward this world into a righteous government, into the principles of God in the ruling and reigning and stewarding of this world. So we're called to be kingdoms, and a kingdom, singular, one kingdom. We're united no matter where we live and where we're working in this world. In God's kingdom, we are one. A kingdom and priest is plural, to serve our God. Priest speaks of the spiritual duties of the church, whereas kingdom speaks of the civic duties. So we are to be priest. Priest, what we saw in chapter 1, we saw Christ tending the lamps, the lampstands of the church, trimming the wicks, replenishing the oil. This is the duty of each Christian. We are to add a little bit of oil to our communities. We're to help trim the wicks in our communities. We're to steward the people of God. We are to proclaim the gospel to those on the outside. We're to stand up for truth. And they will reign on earth. So we always think that we're going to just like live and dwell in heaven. Well, when we get to the end of the book, we're going to find out that heaven's coming down to earth. This is our place where we're going to dwell. This is the place of influence now. We are called to influence this world. We do not influence this world by accommodating the culture. The church cannot assimilate with the toxic culture of this world. We are called to resist the toxic culture, which is what we're going to see all throughout the apocalypse. That's why Christians were martyred in the apocalypse. That's why there's so much martyrdom, because we're resisting the beast. We're resisting the toxic culture, the whore of Babylon. We're going to find out. That's what she represents. And so that's what the call of the church is. To resist the culture of this world and to influence the culture of this world as kings and priests, serving, reigning, and ruling in spiritual domains and in civic domains. Verse 11, then I looked and I heard a voice of many angels, numbering thousands upon thousands and 10,000s times 10,000. They're innumerable. They encircled the throne and the living creatures and the elders, and in a loud voice they sang. So now we have a second song being sung. Before I go into this, let me say this. All throughout the apocalypse, we're going to see these inbreaks of worship. There is more worship displayed throughout the apocalypse than any other book in the Bible except for the book of Psalms. Worship throughout the apocalypse, we can see it as warfare. It is going to be strategically placed within the apocalypse. Like right now, we've had chapter 4 and chapter 5 filled with worship scenes right before the onslaught of hell is spewed out upon earth. You know, God is about to judge the world, the judicial reign, the judicial rule of God. But in that, we see spiritual warfare coming to the forefront. The enemy attacking like never before. We're going to see locusts coming out of the abyss, a beast coming out of the sea, and a beast coming out of the land, speaking of a military invasion of demonic forces. So worship is seen as warfare throughout the book of Revelation. So when we lift our voice and worship God, something is happening in the spiritual world that we can't quite see. Strongholds begin to get loosed when we worship. Forces of darkness are pushed back when we worship. We see the same kind of thing in Daniel. When Daniel would pray, and fast, we see that spiritual dynamic happening there with the angel Michael trying to get to Daniel and engaged in spiritual warfare. Verse 12, in a loud voice they sang, worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Notice it's in a loud voice. It's proclaimed out. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth, wisdom, strength, honor, glory, and praise. 7 attributes are mentioned there. I'm not going to break down what all of those mean. Wealth might be surprising when we see that that the whore of Babylon is condemned because of her wealth. But this wealth that we're speaking of here is properly stewarded wealth. It speaks of worth and value of the Lamb and of his kingdom. Power, we already see perfect power, wisdom, all gaining, we already saw that through the all-knowing eyes. Strength, honor, glory, and praise. Verse 13, then I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth, 3 areas again, and on the sea. I'm sorry, there's 4 that time. Heaven, earth, under the earth, and on the sea. That there's 4 is suggestive of all of the universe, all of creation, because 4 is a number for the earth. There's mentioned 4 corners of the earth as an example. So this is speaking of the universality of worship, and all that is in them singing, to him who sits upon the throne and to the Lamb be praise and honor and glory and power. 4 attributes again. Forever and ever. And the 4 living creatures said, Amen. And the 24 elders fell down in worship. That there's 4 living creatures singing this further enhances the universality of worship. This is all of the redeemed and the angels and everyone who is for God is singing and proclaiming this. And the 24 elders, again, as we're going to see throughout the apocalypse, are falling down prostrate in worship, which speaks of perhaps about how the church ought to worship in humility with raised voices and a posture of reverence, I would say. So that concludes chapter 5. There's a lot really packed in that little worship scene, isn't there? And still so much more that could have been said. But I think we hopefully gleaned something from that. And we're going to see as this builds, this again, building on that Exodus motif, where the people of God are being ushered out of this world and into the next. So join me next week for chapter 6, and I thank you for listening. God bless.